We're going to be looking at today the animal kingdom and completing the graphic organizer, which is on page 14A of your handbook. So first of all, animals share some characteristics. All animals in the animal kingdom are multicellular, made of many cells. Some of them are very small, but still made of many cells. These cells are eukaryotic, meaning that they have a nucleus. U is do. They do have a nucleus, which contains the genetic information. All animals are heterotrophic. Remember, plants are autotrophic. Auto meaning self-feeder. Hetero meaning other feeders. So they have to take in food from another another source. There are two groups of animals that we can identify. We have, first of all, the invertebrates. Some of the more common invertebrates are shown in the diagram. These are animals that have no backbone. And then, of course, we have the vertebrates, animals that do have a backbone. And there are 5 classes of vertebrates: the fish, amphibians, reptiles, birds, and mammals. We can go ahead and skip this slide and get on to the life functions of animals. The life functions, the Sturringer processes, are going to be outlined on your graphic organizer. So first we have synthesis, to make, and synthesis is making molecules that are necessary for life. In animals, this would involve protein synthesis. It would also involve lipid synthesis, making molecules that build up an organism's body. Transport in animals involves moving molecules from place to place within the animal's body. So this is accomplished through the use of blood. Blood is like the trucker on the highway. It carries stuff. So in the case of animals, the blood cells are carrying nutrients and oxygen to the cells of an organism, and then carrying waste products away from the cells of an organism. Some animals have what is called a closed circulatory system, and that would include us, humans. A closed circulatory system is one in which the blood is enclosed in vessels like arteries and veins. On the other hand, an open circulatory system is shown in the second picture, and in this case there are no arteries or veins. Instead, the blood bathes the organs in an open body cavity, and that's how the nutrients and oxygen is delivered and the waste products are removed. The heart's function in an animal is to pump blood, and so in different animals there are different types of hearts, but the type of heart that humans and other mammals have is the most complicated and the most efficient. It's a 4-chambered heart, so 2 atria and 2 ventricles, and that's shown in the picture. And the benefit to this type of heart is that it keeps the oxygenated blood separate from the deoxygenated blood. The oxygenated blood needs to be carried to the cells, and the deoxygenated blood needs to go to the lungs to pick up more oxygen. Next, we have excretion. Excretion involves getting rid of waste, also balancing fluids. There are different methods of excretion in different animals. So first of all, some animals have NEPHRIDIA, worms have this, and MALPIGHIAN tubules, insects have this, and these are shown in the first 2 pictures. These are specialized excretory structures in certain body segments that filter the nitrogenous waste from the blood. Nitrogenous waste is nitrogen-containing waste. That's urine for us, and also sweat for us. Now, in more complex animals like mammals, there are kidneys. Kidneys are organs made up of smaller parts called nephrons, and these filter waste from the blood as it moves through the kidneys. And then that urine, that nitrogenous waste, passes through the ureters, and you can see that on the diagram. The kidneys go to the ureters, and then that urine collects in the urinary bladder and exits the body through the urethra. Next, we have respiration. Respiration involves taking in oxygen and releasing carbon dioxide for the purpose of producing ATP. So different animals have different ways of respiring. Simple animals like worms may be able to respire through their skin. Their skin is moist, and so oxygen can diffuse through the moist skin and enter the bloodstream directly. Other animals like insects, look at the grasshopper picture up at the top, have tiny pores called spiracles in certain body segments. Those spiracles take in oxygen. So that grasshopper, it's not breathing through its nose, it's breathing through those little holes in its abdomen. So if you wanted to drown a grasshopper, you'd stick its butt underwater, not its head. But don't do that. The gills in certain animals have thin membranes that allow oxygen to be diffused from aquatic environments into the bloodstream. And then the most complex respiratory structure are the lungs. The lungs are for terrestrial animals or land-living animals. They are made of these little grape-like clusters. Look down at the bottom of the picture of the lungs, called alveoli. And these alveoli allow for fast diffusion of oxygen into the blood and then carbon dioxide out of the blood. So when your lungs fill up with oxygen, it goes into those little grape-like structures and then diffuses into the arteries and capillaries that surround those structures. And carbon dioxide diffuses out of the blood and into those structures. So when you exhale, it comes out of your lungs. Next, we have nutrition, which involves obtaining food. So some animals have mandibles or teeth, which of course are chewing mouth parts that are specialized for particular food sources. Look at all those ants. They all eat different types of food, so they all have slightly different types of mandibles. And then the food goes into the digestive tract. Different animals have different ways of digesting food, but for a mammal like us, the food goes down the esophagus into the stomach where there are enzymes to continue digestion. It moves on into the intestines, and look at the diagram of the intestine. You can see these finger-like projections called microvilli that increase the surface area inside the intestine and allow all of the good nutrients to be absorbed back into the body and go to the cells. Skip down to reproduction. Reproduction means to make more organisms. Only a few kinds of animals can reproduce asexually. These are the simplest type of animals, like sponges. Sponges are animals. And in that first picture, you can see little fragments of sponges that can land in the water and grow into a new sponge. Some animals, like starfish, are able to regenerate lost parts. But most animals reproduce sexually, and that involves sperm fertilizing egg. So it depends on where they live as to how that happens. In the picture you see of the frogs, the female lays her eggs right there in the water. The male comes along and releases sperm right on top of the eggs. He doesn't put the sperm in her body, so the fertilization, sperm meets egg, outside the female's body. Internal fertilization is, of course, when the male puts the sperm inside the female's body, which is the way humans carry out fertilization. Go back up now to growth and development. Some animals are able to use eggs as they begin to grow and develop, and these eggs are changed and developed over time into the adult. So this process is called metamorphosis. Insects and amphibians start with eggs, and then they undergo changes during their life. And depending on the type of organism, the metamorphosis can be incomplete or complete. So first look at the picture of the grasshopper, and you can see the egg, and then it hatches into a little nymph, which is a small adult-like body. Then it molts, it sheds its exoskeleton, gets a little bit bigger, molts again, gets even bigger, molts again, gets even bigger, until finally we have an adult. But it's called incomplete because all of the nymphs look very similar to the adult. Complete metamorphosis is when there is a complete change in form. So again, look at the butterfly. So we start with an egg, then the larva, that's the caterpillar, the pupa is the cocoon, and then that hatches into a completely different adult. Same thing happens with the frog, the egg, then the tadpole, and then what they call the froglet, and then the adult frog. Only one kind of mammal uses an egg, but there are other animals like reptiles and amphibians that use eggs as well. And some of these eggs are amniotic eggs. And so when you're eating eggs for breakfast, those are amniotic eggs. They contain yolk, which is the food for the developing baby, and membranes inside. You can look at the picture and see that for gas exchange, oxygen and carbon dioxide, and for storing waste. This is also like a little private pond. It provides a protective environment for the embryo, the baby, where it can develop on land without drying out. The animal that you see that looks kind of odd is called a duck-billed platypus. It is a monotreme, that is the category that it's in. And it's the only mammal that reproduces using an egg. There are a few mammals that reproduce using a pouch, and so the young are born very, very immaturely, and then they wiggle their way up to a pouch, and inside the pouch they continue their development and feed from the mother. Humans and most other mammals are placental, and so the placenta is a pad of tissue that connects the embryo to the mother's circulatory system. That's how the embryo gets oxygen and gets rid of carbon dioxide. That's how the embryo gets food and gets rid of waste. So placental mammals have that connection. Lastly, regulation means to control. Organisms are able to control their bodies using a nervous system. Nerve cells called neurons, look at that picture, it's the green structure, are shaped according to their function. They send messages, receive messages, so they're long and thin like a telephone wire to receive and send messages. Some animals have these clusters of nerve cells instead of a brain. Like a worm, it doesn't really have a brain, it just has these clusters called ganglia. Other organisms have real complex sensory structures, like that compound eye you see in the picture of the fly. It sees lots of little images. The antenna that you see on the honeybee, that's a complex sensory structure. It allows it to intake information. And then the brain is the most complex regulatory structure, and only the highest order mammals have that. Hormones are also part of the regulation system. This is the endocrine system in the body. Hormones allow animals to respond to stimuli and to regulate body systems. Hormones travel through the circulatory system and send messages to other parts of the body. So those two systems are the most important when it comes to regulation.